What's up guys, this is Nick at ManriqueBilt Customs. My videos are gonna be a DIY and a whole custom twist on the do-it-yourself, a make it yourself and install it yourself all at the same time. I'll get custom scrap material and junkyard parts and make one-off pieces for my vehicle or whatever it is that I'm doing. So today we're gonna turn my alternator into a welding machine and have an onboard welder built into the truck. I'll build a control panel so that I can go from charging the battery to welding, and also have an outlet for my power tools. I've already done tons of stuff to my truck already, and as you can see, it's not your average 99 Dodge Ram 2500. And that's pretty much it.
Okay, so so let's check out what I did.
Well, okay. All right, guys. Well, what I've gotten so far here is I got my welding leads connected here on my fiberglass, and my fiberglass panel I'm gonna end up trimming, but we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna mount all this. I got my plug 120 outlets. I got my DC volt gauge. Got my 35 amp toggle switches, a little connecting panel, whatnot, I don't know, and some fuse holders. And we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna come up with a panel that I'm gonna go ahead and mount so that we can get all the wiring done. And we'll get that done first before I start messing with the alternator, because I'm still undecided on whether I'm gonna use the alternator I have or go ahead and mount another alternator and connect that one. So let's get this all put together first. All right guys, so this is what I've come up with. This is my panel. Let me get you in a good shady spot here. So we've got our 120 plug outlet, GFCI, for you know, the weather and water and stuff. I've got my two switches. One's going to be actually for the outlet, the other one's going to be for the welding to disconnect the battery. I've got my DC voltage gauge. I've got my fuse panel. It's got what, 5, but I'm only going to use 2. And then, you know, I could also use these for, you know, lights or whatnot. And the main star of the show is my quick disconnects. And I'll probably have, you know, I don't know, positive, negative, or vice versa. I'm not quite sure yet. So in the process of building this, I was kind of debating on where I kind of wanted to put it. So instead of coming over here and mounting it like on the side, you know, somewhere, I've come to the conclusion that I'm gonna mount it right on top of the radiator fan shroud. So being on top of there, let me set you down over here for just a second and give you a good kind of a bird's eye view, I guess you could say, of what's gonna happen. So what I've done is, because, you know, these things kind of stick out kind of far, I've notched out where I'm gonna run my cables and my wires through here, and they'll run down the frame and back up to the alternator and whatnot. But in order for me to service this thing, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna set 2 hinges, and I'm gonna set these back here and go ahead and bolt or rivet these back here in the back, so that I can pivot this in a way so that I can go ahead and, you know, service it, plug it up, change things and whatnot. And back here up front, I'm gonna put some kind of a clip locking mechanism, you know, kind of like how I have on my gas cap in the back. And that way when I push down, it's up, you know, push down and click lock in. That way I know for sure that that will be locked in and clicked, and you know, I think this thing's gonna come out pretty cool. I'm gonna label these. You know, I have a label printing machine, so I'll label these, and I'll label which, you know, which fuse is what. And what I've done in the process of building all this stuff together, I'll take you guys over here to the passenger side. What I've went ahead and I've done is got my welding leads. I got some 1/4 inch plate and cut that about 2 inch by, I can't remember, about 10 or 11 inches, almost a foot, and I've hooked them. And I've got another one down here. This one's a little bit thinner, and went ahead and I just wrapped my welding leads. They're the positive and the stinger, they're roughly about 25 feet long, and I think that's gonna be long enough. And I've had this, you know, that I use to weld with. It's just a magnet ground. I think it works really good. That's where that's gonna go. And I'll have a duffel bag back in the back here that I'll have, you know, my welding rods and just other miscellaneous things. I have a angle grinder that I got, and I'll keep that with me also, and just kind of keep stock everything that I'm going to need for welding in here. Welding leads, my welding fuse gauge outlet panel is done, made, and now I'm going to go ahead and bolt those hinges in and get this all wired up, get it all, you know, get all my wires kind of tucked in, you know how I like it, all nice and neat and everything. All right guys, so after some extensive research on the internet and on many different Dodge, Chrysler, GM, Ford forums, and don't have to modify much. Well, all I really need to do is put a disconnect on my battery cable, because I do not want that hooked up. I'll end up frying the battery. I'm going to put a disconnect on my battery cable. Let me go ahead and disconnect. I'm going to disconnect the two prong plug here. It's got 2 prongs. I've got on my truck here a blue wire and a green wire. Now I believe my blue wire is my 12 volt with the ignition key on. This will get 12 volts, which is going to excite my rotor back here, which is what I want to do. And my volt regulator, which is the green, and that is a positive negative, and what happens is that turns into positive negative like a whole bunch of times per second, and that's going to regulate, you know, through the PCM, so that it will backfeed into the alternator and turning the current into a 12 volt so that it will charge my battery. And what I'm going to do, and what I've, you know, read, was to ground this wire. The 12 volt will excite like it's supposed to, but instead of backfeeding 12 volts, this will just amp up a whole bunch of DC voltage. So I'm not actually going to convert my DC voltage into AC. I'm going to leave it at a DC voltage, and with what I'm going to use is a cable so that I can run my throttle. So at a higher RPM, obviously when this thing speeds up faster, it's going to increase in voltage. In theory, you know, this is yet to be tested. Just kind of giving you the rundown on what I'm exactly going to do. So I'm gonna put a disconnect on my battery cable so that I can switch that off. My positive electrode lead, my welding lead, that's gonna go to the positive on the back of the alternator. Let's give you a better view here. That's going to go onto the positive connection on the alternator, which would be the battery connection. So I'm going to disconnect that cable to the battery, and from here, this is going to be where my positive welding lead's going to go. My negative is here on the chassis, you know, it's actually on the alternator itself. I'm going to put my voltage regulator wire to a switch. So I'll have one switch to turn this off and another switch to ground it. And then we're gonna just go ahead and leave the blue wire, my 12 volt, that's gonna stay connected because that's still gonna have 12 volt current going through it, you know, with the ignition on, because, you know, I'm gonna have the truck running the whole time. Now this setup is, you know, this isn't something that's gonna be constant. This is strictly for emergency purposes only. Okay, so what I'm doing here is I'm getting my battery cable that went to the back of the alternator, and I'm just, you know, I'm making it longer. So what I'm gonna end up doing over here is I'm going to, I will be connecting a, you know, a kill switch, an on and off switch. So this will be on for normal charging, and then I will flip the switch, turn it off, so that my power leads here on my panel, which will also be on the back of the alternator, those will then, you know, I can use, they'll be activated, I guess you can say, because then with the kill switch being off, it no longer will be getting power from the alternator to the battery. So that cable I'm going to run to the kill switch, and it will then run back to the alternator. So I've got my welding leads here. This is a negative, that's positive down here, and I've got one going to my, this is my, let's see, my ground wire is going to my neutral side, that's the white cable. Then I've got my power, which is the black wire, going to the hot side. I have my ground going to my ground side of my gauge. Got my hot side going to the positive side on the gauge down in there. And those are my taps, you know, coming off of my ground and my power. And obviously, you know, I've got ground, and that's coming from the alternator ground, which is here. I just have it on the back of the bolt there on the bracket to the alternator. I've got my hot, which is going through my little wire harness down in there, and it's coming up, and I have that here. I've kind of, you know, the way I've taped them, I kind of, you know, so I can kind of differ the two, but this is my welding hot lead there. Then I've got my wires from my field cable. One is, and I have them underneath here, I have them, let me show you. I've got them, you know, I got them tagged here. So I've got, let's see, this one will be my voltage regulator, and this one will be the plug side. So this switch will stay on all the time while I'm driving, you know, for charging purposes. Then I will turn this off, which will disconnect the two, so that the voltage is no longer regulated. This switch up here, I have, let's see, I've got, I mean, I know which ones they are, but let's show you. I've got one coming from the plug side, you know, that's teed off from the plug side going into the alternator. And the other one, I have the other one going straight to ground. And that ground, that's the one I think I've showed you already, but that sucker's right there, straight grounded to the frame. And like I said before, my truck is grounded like every which way. I've got number 2 wire lugged and crimped and just grounded everywhere. They just get, you know, that I've got a good ground, and that's about it. Oh, actually what I have here, because this is not a GFCI plug, I actually have it tapped here into a fuse. So I have a 30 amp fuse. The only thing I'm missing from this whole setup is a cable so that I can monitor the RPMs. So I'll probably just have that running kind of just straight. That way, you know, my wife doesn't have to sit in the driver's seat and press the pedal while I'm welding. I know she got tired of that really quick, but that's the setup under here. And here on my hinges, I ended up just putting rivets on the top and on the bottom and on the other side. And my little clip here is just kind of where, let's see if I can get underneath. You see the little 2 little things there, and they kind of, they'll open up so it comes down and snaps into place. Okay, so my throttle cable, you know, I think I'm gonna end up mounting it somewhere over here. I made a bracket, just another piece of that fiberglass. I'm gonna drill that hole a little bit bigger, probably mount that like, I don't know, here, or I don't know, sideways, I don't know, just depending on how I can get that cable to wrap around. The cable that I've got, and I actually, you know, another pick apart, I went to pick apart and got the throttle cable off of the same truck, you know, the one that goes to the pedal. I got that cable, and I went to Tractor Supply and found it's actually a universal choke cable. Let's try it out. Okay, so a day has gone by and I've tested this out, but what happens is when I pull on this to get my RPMs going, watch what it does. It goes right back to 0. I mean, there's like no way to do anything. And I was gonna do like a bike cable kind of, you know, to switch gears to click, and I looked everywhere, couldn't find anything. So on my way home from work, stopped at a little small town Napa auto parts store. Super helpful. They actually suggested, and they actually had in stock, another similar kind of cable pull system, but this one actually has a lock on it. All right, so I got my new one, and this one, you come in here and you pull and you twist. Oh wait, one more little twist. There it goes, and it locks. So that way I can keep up with my RPMs, you know, and get that, you know, down packed and whatnot. But let me go ahead and show you guys what this thing can do, and we'll go ahead and call this one done. And that's a wrap.